President Buhari expressed concern over poor service delivery to the grassroots.
All the sacrifices the country is making by putting you through institutions and getting you ready to lead.
National Security Advisor reassures Nigerians of government's desire to achieve peace and security.
This administration has been making significant strides towards dealing with the drivers of internal security concerns in the country.
On 2022 World AIDS Day, Nigeria closes to UN AIDS target of ending HIV and AIDS by 2030.
It's equal access to treatment and prevention services, and it calls for collective action.
Good morning, Nigeria today focuses on campaign violence ahead of the 2023 elections.
Alright, so it's exactly 85 days or so to the 2023 general elections. And as expected, key players have expressed concern over various degrees of threats to free, fair and credible elections, and that of course will include increasing incidents of hate speech and other divisive communication designed to amplify ethnic or religious differences.
There have been reports of attacks during the ongoing campaigns, with some persons reported to have died or even been injured. And of course, these attacks include violent physical assault on those who were merely undertaking the tasks of putting up campaign materials. Also, the electoral umpire has had its own fair share, as it were, with unrelenting attacks on some of his offices in different parts of the country.
Of course, Kingsley, you heard of the incident this Monday when some unknown gunmen invaded the residence of the women leader of the Labour Party in Kawa local government area of Kaduna State, and she is Mrs. Victoria Chintex. We hear she was killed while her husband sustained gunshot injuries from that attack. Incidentally, he was rushed to a health facility, and we wish him quick recovery.
Well, last month, the Inspector General of Police, also during a meeting with political parties and other stakeholders ahead of the 2023 elections, did indicate that the police have been receiving reports of some state governments who encourage political thugs and also utilize national security outfits under their control to disrupt otherwise seamless and statutorily guaranteed campaign activities of political parties or candidates with whom they hold opposing political views.
So, Go Nigeria Initiative, which is a pro-Nigeria advocacy group, recently also called on the Independent National Electoral Commission, that's INEC, for the implementation of Section 128B of the 2022 Electoral Act, which clearly protects the rights of all candidates to campaign anywhere without fear or threat of violence.
Now, according to what, of course, it's been reported, over 100 lives were lost in various electoral issues in the past. In 1999, where the country, of course, had elections that ushered in the Fourth Republic, which began in 1999. Now, there have also been concerns that at least 30 persons were killed in other incidents. Indeed, yesterday, the Daily Trust newspaper reported that over a 25-year period, no fewer than 1,500 persons had been killed in the course of electioneering.
All right, and reports also reveal that 2011 elections was the bloodiest, with the declaration of course, the incumbent president then as winner, which followed 3 days rioting and communal unrest that left at least about 800 people dead, 65,000 people were displaced. And the big question now is, how can we ensure that 2023 elections is violence-free, fair, and of course credible? On this note, I welcome you to Good Morning Nigeria this Friday as we focus on 2023 elections. Again, how can we make campaign violence-free? I am Claire Adilabu Abdul-Razak, welcoming you.
Well, Claire, I think that it's no longer a question of saying how do we make the 2023 elections violence-free. There are already incidents of violence that are being reported that have occurred, and they will form part of the historical account of what occurred in the lead up to the 2023 elections. I think more pertinent questions, most respectfully, would then be, how do we stop the raging violence in the course of electioneering in the country? And then how do you also bring to book persons who are involved or engaged in these acts of violence? Have they been arrested? If they have been arrested, are they being speedily tried to account for their criminal activities? Activities, of course, that offend against the criminal code or penal code, or also against clear provisions of the Electoral Act 2022. And of course, we do know that various facilities belonging to INEC have also been under attack, as we have indicated. Plus, individuals, candidates, and political parties have had their facilities, campaign materials, and others destroyed willfully by opposing persons. So that's the issue that we shall be examining in, of course, our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today. I join my colleague Claire to also welcome you to the program. I'm Kingsley Osadolo. Now, in the course of the program, our regular complimentary segments will follow, including business and newspaper review. Right now, here is Elizabeth Omori, who has the highlights of the morning news. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning, Kingsley and Claire. Here's the morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed serious concern over poor service delivery to the people at the grassroots, which he attributed to lack of administrative and financial autonomy, as well as integrity in the application of resources meant for socio-economic development in the local governments. This was while exchanging views with participants of the Senior Executive Course 44 of the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies.
Has done so much in building trust between the government and the people. It is obvious that government cannot afford to pay lip service to the recommendation contained in this report. I assure you the report will be treated with the seriousness and urgency it deserves.
One of the policy thrusts of President Muhammadu Buhari is tackling insecurity in Nigeria, especially the threat of terrorism. Giving updates on the efforts of the administration in tackling insecurity in the country, the National Security Advisor, Babagana Monguno, is optimistic that with the current tempo of operations, the administration will achieve the desired degree of peace, security, and prosperity for the nation.
Various policy documents were developed and strategic institutions established to lay the groundwork for future coordination to deal with security challenges in the country. The enactment of the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act of 2022 is one of our key success stories in the fight against terrorism and violent extremism.
Away from security, Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed has stated that the present administration under President Muhammadu Buhari has consistently supported states with funds to enable them deliver the dividends of democracy. The minister stated this at the 6th edition of the PMB Scorecard Series 2015 to 2023, which featured the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed.
Unfortunately, all revenue is underperforming because of the criminality, but recently NNPC has reported that that has been curtailed, and we're already beginning to see the pick up in the production volumes, which will mean that more revenues will come to the Federation.
Talking health now, HIV services have received tremendous improvements since the coming of the present administration in 2015, leading to a significant drop in new HIV infection from more than 103,000 in 2019 to 93,000 in 2021. This was disclosed at this year's World AIDS Day, where Nigeria was set to be closer to the UNAIDS target of ending HIV/AIDS by 2030, having reached 90, 98, 95 of the targets.
Lives to end AIDS, equal access to treatment and prevention services, and it calls for collective action. We need to increase availability, quality, and sustainability of services for treatment, testing, prevention, so that everyone is served.
The leadership of the National Assembly has unveiled the third annual report of the 9th National Assembly.
For us, we want to bring to the awareness and sensitization of citizens. Look, this is what members of the National Assembly have been doing and should be doing. The barometer for measuring the performance of the legislature should be by the number of bills that he has sponsored and have seen the light of the day.
To electrification, federal government is deploying hybrid solar power plants to universities in the country to improve access to electricity, enhance quality of learning and research. Usman Danfodio University Secretary is the latest beneficiary of the Energizing Education Program.
To provide sustainable and reliable electricity to the entire campus, improve education and create a better university experience for both students and the staff.
In the Nigerian midstream and downstream petroleum regulatory authority says respite is on the way for motorists in Abuja and its environs. Mejida Abdulkadir, regional coordinator, NMDPRA Abuja, who visited Suleja Depot to interface with tanker drivers, assures that product tracking has been intensified as supply chain issues in the depot have been resolved. And that's the morning news. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Claire. Do stay with us. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're on to Good Morning Nigeria, and it's happening live on the network service of the NTA. This is Friday's edition. So let's check what business news is trending at the moment. And from our newsroom, we have Alika Wanachi on business news.
Small and Medium Scale Development Agency, SMEDAN, commits to boosting youth entrepreneurship and job creation potential as it builds the capacity of MSMEs in the country. This follows the commencement of the North Central Zone Training and Empowerment of Youths under the Entrepreneurship and Vocational Component in Abuja, driven by the Small and Medium Scale Development Agency, SMEDAN, to develop small businesses.
SMEDAN has gone all out to see how they can bring out, give them a startup kit to start, especially the youths that are just roaming the streets, because we believe in SMEDAN that the days of the white collar job are over. So it is now for us to be, we are preaching, we want them to be self-employed. And after some weeks, we will go back. We want to monitor them to see what they are, the state they are now, and where they're having the challenges.
The National Business Skills Development Initiative is designed to reposition the fashion, leather and wax industries, as well as laundry and car wash business. At the end of the training, potential entrepreneurs will receive startup packs, which will include industrial machines to commence operations. Let's take a look at the tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Alika Wanachi, Arua.
Thank you very much, Alika Okparaji Aruwa, for the business package on Good Morning Nigeria. Coming up next, newspaper review.
All right, and it always gives me joy to welcome Chukwudi Okuli Uwaja Elias Chooks the boy.
Thank you. As I said yesterday, this breakfast is becoming more and more alluring, inviting. I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, good to see you, Chooks.
Thanks, Kingsley.
Okay, so let's begin by taking a look at the window page of the Leadership newspaper. And the lead story, of course, is in sync with our topic for conversation after this newspaper review. Ahead of 2023 elections, security agencies put governors and politicians on watch list. Details on page 4 with two riders. NSA, that's security advisor, warns against using thugs to disrupt opposition campaigns. Says elections will hold as planned next year. And then Nigerians, not God, responsible for a nation's woes. That's according to former President Olusegun Obasanjo. And President Muhammadu Buhari accuses governors of stealing local government allocations. COS, as Chief of Army Staff, Inspector General of Police, and EFCC Chairman all committed for contempt in 3 weeks. Details on page 6. Dati Baba Ahmed wants Aisha Buhari's critic Amino released. Qatar 2022, Germany and Belgium out. And Japan, Spain, Morocco, and Croatia advanced to last 16. Okay.
Okay, so let's take a look at the New Telegraph front page. The lead story, it's on 2023 census, and it's captioned 2023 census fraught with corruption, report saying that sources. It is of that on pages 3 and 7, that there is a counter. Management spent 1.8 billion naira on stakeholders meeting as commissioners. Chairman said usurp staff functions. Allegations not true. NPC. Details of that on pages 3 and 7. There are other stories, political stories, trending on the right-hand column there. And of course, there's one there. It says Aregbesola, that's the Minister for Interior. Why passport applicants face challenges? Why passport applicants face challenges? You can read up that stories on pages 5 and 8. And the other stories, padded 206 billion naira meant for military equipment. And that's coming from Humanitarian Affairs Minister. Padding minor mistake, PAMSEC. Troops recovered stolen crude. Others worth 471 million naira in 2 weeks. Let's see stories that are trending just a little below the nameplate. Fuel scarcity. 2 billion liters of petrol available now. That's NNPCL. And Sanusi, Nigerian Airlines, posted losses for 30 years. You can pick up details on pages 2 and 27. NSA to governors. No hiding place for thugs obstructing opposition campaigns. Assures that 2023 elections will hold. Now, Wiki to South governors. You asked Minister to insult me with flyover comment. Salary arrears will be paid. Oshodeke assures ASU members. And the writer to that story says, next action to be decided by NEC. That's Oshodeke, ASU president. And all right, I think that's about the stories trending on the front page of the New Telegraph.
And as you say that, one item quickly jumps to my mind. I think Kingsley was actually the one who read that first. Security agencies with governors, politicians on watch list. The National Security Advisor is warning against using thugs to disrupt opposition's campaigns. He says election will hold as planned next year. Now, yesterday we said something a bit similar to it. They were warning
governors, telling them they have no right whatsoever to stop rallies organized by people they consider to be their opponents. Now, when I was speaking at the weekly ministerial briefing organized by the presidential communication team at Asevilla, I noted a few points. You can't prosecute a sitting governor, but you can deter him or her. How do you do this? Make sure the relevant ministries and agencies do not relent in running social service jingles, holding town hall meetings, and using any avenue that helps us to open the people's eyes and stop people from hoodwinking them. Make it difficult for them to recruit the thugs, though this would entail the higher order of keeping the potential thugs gainfully engaged. People will say that if there is no employment, nobody would readily submit themselves for something they might engage in and not return home with their lives. Okay? Now, I asked the question I asked yesterday again. We're now at the point of final deterrence. That is, holding you accountable for what you have done. And I'm asking here, isn't there a penalty for pulling down, isn't there a penalty for pulling down that poster displayed by your opponent? And I'm talking about the governor's opponent now. I don't like the broken record because it doesn't play well. So dwelling on these things on and on, I am interested in, if they do not listen, how do we hold them accountable? What are the instruments we have to hold them accountable? Immunity clause is not a great helper in this case. I'm not saying it should be changed, but it does happen that you cannot prosecute governors. But as I listed earlier, there are a few things you can do. When I mentioned social service jingles, I wasn't joking. You see, ladies and gentlemen, old school me, I still cherish those days when social service jingles meant a lot. I remember Barredo Rivers 2 in particular. If you do that, now you will carry on. Something to us. Precisely. Then Kingsley, attention please. Your actions can promote or ruin our national image. Here's the reason when done orderly. So behave yourselves, especially in public. Add to Nigeria's growing image. Be a disciplined citizen. That was in Obendo. Kingsley, I want to think we're the same something about.
It's during the military era.
It meant something.
Yes, it meant something.
What happened to jingles on radio and television? Our social service, we have departed from it. Repetition drives in a point. I think drives home a point. I think we should. I'm thinking before I go to you. What is evidence? You wanted to add something to that?
Just to also indicate that it isn't as if public service jingles have been absent from media space. On security, for instance, I'm sure everyone can literally now recite, if you see something, say something. If you hear something, say something. This is on account, of course, the new security challenges and threats that the country is facing. So it's there, but it's just that society is dynamic, and therefore these public service announcements or jingles also have to be dynamic to respond.
Do you see them on private stations? I see them only on national television. Mm-hmm. We are abdicating a responsibility. It means a lot to me. What is Sunday school, Islamia, catechism all about? Mm. You have to lock it in so that the child becomes that noble adult. Yeah,
I think we should also be clear about this. Yeah. The public broadcasters have their role, and private broadcasters have their own issues to contend with. A public broadcaster is partly funded from the public purse. Yes. No private broadcaster gets funded from the public purse.
That's why they can't really. So one big social jingle.
No, hang on. The space is there. It's not there. It's not there. You pay for that space for you to have your services running for the number of hours you operate in a day is costly.
Then the annual take up that responsibility.
Precisely. What you could advocate for is a discounted rate. But to say simply come and take it, because the private stations would argue, whoever is bringing this announcement for us, whether at the state, local, or national level, you have your budget. And your budget should account for everything. There's no social responsibility in that. I'm saying this is also the taking responsibility. No, social, that alone isn't the avenue for social responsibility. It's not the only avenue. There are all other avenues for CSR. There's no question about that. Yeah. So what I'm saying is as follows. Look, public broadcasters, take up your responsibility. That is the first one. Secondly, you approach the private broadcasters and then ask for a discounted rate. Ask for a discounted rate. If you log the number of minutes that your jingles are supposed to be run in a day, it isn't just you say a 60-second jingle. Are you going to run a 60-second jingle only once in a day? So if you ask a private broadcaster, I'm speaking. I mean, you have experiences in the private sector. What does it cost you to keep your station on air for 12 hours in a day? What does it cost you to keep your station on air for 24 hours in a day? Who pays your bills? I'm telling you, if a business faces challenges, what are the remedies for that business, private business, that faces challenges? Can it go to the assembly and ask for I have to respect your view. Otherwise, I thought this would come naturally. I agree with you. Who means well position. I agree with you, Chukwudi. Don't sacrifice it too much. And because of the force of, the force it carries. I remember a particular jingle. And it's still in my head. I can't remember. It says, the highway is not a racetrack. Remember those who left at home are waiting for you. It goes like this. The highway is not a racetrack. And it depends on how you have a Bible for you. So, I think you're probably not getting what I'm saying. Okay. I am not against the development and use of jingles on the airways. Content is one thing. But I'm saying that if I'm a private broadcaster and you are saying that I should devote part of my airtime to playing those jingles, the question that I will also ask you, the supplier of the jingle or the producer of the jingle, is say, look, on what basis do I do this? What is the frequency for me to run it? The frequency there will be, if you are assuming you say you are a state-owned entity, hold on a second, State Ministry of Information, you have your budget. Yes. And your budget will also include public enlightenment. If it includes public enlightenment, what is the cost? Let's also not miss the point that there have been instances where some persons have taken advantage of public broadcasters claiming to have spent resources. Now, I now understand you. We don't have time. I now understand you. Quickly, the president is asking state governors to stop tinkering with local government funds. The people have to be developed, and the only way we can get this done is to make sure that funds go to the right source. The local government autonomy bill. I have to stop. I'm sorry, but I must not forget to. I just remember the lyrics of that jingle, and it's very, very important. I think it says the highway is not a racetrack. Yes. No matter where you're coming from, remember those you left at home are waiting to welcome you safely back home. We wish you a safe journey. Just warning those who, motorists to be careful. Nobody told me you're bad on the It's Good Morning Nigeria live on NTA's network service, and we of course are broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios. As a prompt for our discussion, which is on election violence ahead of the 2023 polls, let's listen to this background by our correspondent, Oyemi Ajayi.
With the commencement of campaigns, political parties are already selling themselves through their manifestos to convince them on why they should be given the chance to lead. This is targeted towards the forthcoming 2023 general elections. Of concern now is the level of violence which has characterized campaigns in the country to the extent of even maiming. Section 128B of the 2022 Electoral Act protects the right of candidates to campaign without threats of violence. It prevents infliction or threatens to inflict by his or herself or by any other person any minor or serious injury, damage, harm, or loss on or against a person in order to induce or compel that person to vote or refrain from voting, or on account of such person having voted or refrained from voting. This section of the Electoral Act is being disobeyed as even the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Mungudo, warned about how the growth in campaign-related violence becomes a threat to the successful conduct of the election. Not just physical, but verbal violence, or what you can either call hate speech, being experienced across the country despite signing and conceding to the National Peace Accord. Abusing, insulting, shouting down, labeling, or dragging those who hold a different view or have a different preference has become the order of the day, and this doesn't reflect the tenets of democracy. Just last month, the convoy of the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, was alleged to have been attacked in Maiduguri, Borno State, during the party's campaign. Some time ago, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, stated that more than 24 people were killed so far in the current campaign cycle. These are just few of many of such experienced in parts of the country. What sanctions have violators faced to serve as deterrents? What is the possibility of having a violence-free campaigns? Why are candidates not adhering to the National Peace Accord signed? These are some questions guests already seated will be answering shortly.
All right, we already gave you insights into thematic questionnaires that will form part of our conversation. So let me quickly welcome our guests, and they're seated both here in Abuja and in Lagos. First, Professor Tanibi Alumika is Professor of Criminology and always a friend of the house. He's right here with us. Thank you very much, Prof. I'm good to see you. It's been a while.
Thank you. You're looking good, younger than the last time we saw. Wherever Kingsley kept you.
I'm blushing.
Wherever Kingsley kept you.
I'm blushing. Kingsley, where did they keep me?
That is a question better answered by Mr. Adilabu Abdul Razak.
All right, also my brother Ezenwa Mwago, Chairman Partners for Electoral Reforms and convener Say No Campaign Nigeria. He is also here with us. Thank you very much, Ezenwa.
Good morning. I don't want to repeat what Prof said. But we are not looking bad at that.
Thank you very much. I will also not repeat what I said.
No, I think he said because once he saw Clara, he just said, I must look good too.
His is always looking good. Despite the nature of our job, he comes here almost every day.
I can testify to that.
So, and I'm sure he's grateful to God for that.
Of course, one has to be thankful to God. It's not almost every day, Monday to Friday. Monday to Friday is not almost every day. It's every day.
And he's doing by 11 to 12. He's about his side.
Good morning. All right. Well, we have another regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria joining us in Lagos via Zoom. Is Dr. Bala Hassan, a retired Assistant Inspector General of Police. AIG, Dr. Bala Hassan, good to have you this morning.
Good morning, Steve. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right. Well, we're trying to lighten up our own moods, but the subject matter of our conversation this morning is indeed a very serious one. Earlier, when Claire and I were introducing the subject matter to this interaction, the point was, well, how do you ensure violence-free elections? And of course, it is obvious now that in drafting the history of the 2023 elections, we cannot say that the 2023 elections have been altogether violence-free, because in the lead-up there have been a number of instances. I want to begin with Professor Etanobi Alemika and to re-invite your attention to a paper you delivered at the International Conference Center 3 months ago on election security management. It was a keynote paper at the commencement of the training workshop for election security managers in different parts of the country. Professor Exanobi Alenuka, are you surprised by the various reports on violence with fatalities that we have seen so far?
No, I'm not at all surprised. If you look at the history of violence in Nigeria, you think there's not going to be any difference very soon. And if you take a historical perspective, right from the early 1950s, actually in the 40s, I think it started, gradually got worse in the post-independence. In the 1963-64 Western election, we had, metamorphosed into Operation Wet, which actually one of the things that prepared the ground for the coup of 1966. Then you find in 1983, you find the widespread violence that occurred before, during, and after election. Because when you're talking election-related political violence, you're talking before, during, and after election. And so you can, in the 1983 was after election because of the quality of the outcomes that were announced by the electoral body then. If you take the recent lessons, you discover, except from the transitional one in 1999, which was directly under the military rule, 2003, 2007 were probably the bloodiest routinized political violence. That's why you have all this martial and all those ones that were killed before and during campaign session. Then you have the 2011, which was regular during the before, during election, but especially after the election. It was a little bit better in 2019 election. Maybe that's why we thought this should be better than 2019. So why do we have violence? I think Billy Dudley, one of the foremost pioneer political scientists in Nigeria, said, look, getting into government is everything in Nigeria. And he wrote this as earlier, I think in an article he wrote in 1961 or 1965. And that for those who are friends of the people in government, their time has come. The person in government, his time has come. He cannot be challenged. He has almost unlimited access to public resources. And that's the reason we have violence. It's not that Nigerians are wicked. They are violent for a reason. And that reason is to capture political power, to be able to dominate, to be able to oppress, to be exploit, to be able to exploit with impunity. And unfortunately, we can't control them until we change two parameters. One is to change this idea of going into politics, gaining power in order to do whatever you like with public resources, in order to treat citizens whatever way you like. That's part of the indicator. You have to change the political economy of election on politics itself. The other side is impunity. If you get into it and it has consequences, the bad behavior has consequences, then you can correct the motivation. These two parameters is what we need to work on. Unfortunately, that's what I've not worked on. So you find the more we make effort to make sure that it's difficult for people to rig, the more desperate people become because we are putting obstacle course into their ambition. So I'm not surprised given the effort, the new electoral law, the effort that INEC is making, the innovative technological application in electoral matters, and even the early training you are referring to with the security agencies beginning as early as August to train for a February election. This is one of the first time we're finding that kind of a systematic planning over 6 months by the police, trying to address election security. I think this is what is causing desperation, because as of today, nobody can tell you who will win 2023 election. This is the first time we're actually having competition in the field, not because we have good candidates, but because the candidates have seems to have a balance of power in the field. It has nothing to do with their quality. I think when you have a balance of power, of resources in the field, the resources are not exactly the same.
Thank you, Prof. Let me bring in Ezenwa, and from the data, that he has just given, and data that, coming from some institutions, violence trackers institutions, we understand that post-election violence has been more dominated our previous elections. 2019, we had very, minimal post and pre-election. Have we seen pre-election violence heightened, to a level of concern ahead of 2023?
Well, the fertilizer for pre-election violence is some of what Prof had already itemized, but the contentious nature of the internal party democracy itself that has given you over 600 litigations is a pointer to the challenge of and desperation with which people now want to get into office. The perhaps only existing industry right now is politics. So everybody, since the industries, I mean, your textile industry is dead, your generally that feeling that if I get into government I can be comfortable, I can then do all of what Prof said, even though the motivation may not be altruistic. So that is a fertilizer itself for the pre-violence that we're seeing. Things have become a bit more desperate in the country. More people are getting poorer than before. Then the general feeling of siege, insecurity, and the rest of them are also triggers to the kind of desperation that we have seen for politicians. So yes, the statistics are a bit grim right now in terms of the number of people who have been killed. I was looking at something by Human Angle talking about almost 70 people already. Yes, being killed in pre-election. So, but my worry is the institutions that have responsibility to prevent and then sanction and prosecute are constantly always warning, rather than invoke the law. There's a law already that says if you do XYZ, you can do this. So every time you come on television, you hear the National Security Advisor saying, I won. There's a kinetic response that can happen around some of this. So it comes to the mindset. What kind of mindset? How do we treat elections? What is our attitude to elections? What do we feel about crimes committed during elections? So we believe that's why the whole thing, even about electoral violence, sometimes irritates me. Because crimes, even if you did not have election, crimes already have, penalties that are clear in our books. So those who have responsibility shirk responsibilities and then warn. INEC is warning, the police are warning, the National Security Advisor is warning. So where's the deterrent? Except there are deterrent, then the expert is here. Crime will continue to fester because except people pay for what they have done, people are killed. Okay, Justice Lemu Commission, the report is there. We didn't bring any closure. Our inability to close issues. So people are killed. You don't know whether the perpetrators were brought to book. You don't know what has happened. It energizes those who want to do it in future. So except we bring closure and act on reports that we ourselves convened. These are government panels established to look into why the one that happened. It has recommendations. Those recommendations are clear, but they will never be implemented. So
So it is for me a shirking of responsibility and outsourcing those responsibilities and saying that it's everybody's business, and it's not everybody that is paid to that is on salary and all that to check crimes and criminality during elections. So those who have responsibility should take responsibility and then bring deterrence and ensure that people are sanctioned and prosecuted.
All right, thank you very much, Ezenwango. Let's go over now to Dr. Bala Hassan. Dr. Bala Hassan, let's have your own opening shot on what is playing out in the lead up to the 2023 elections. What do you think is going wrong?
Mr. Speakers, definitely election violation will continue to be with us, which deterrents by those who are supposed to do such carry out enforcement are not being effective, because people who commit offense know that
Oh, sure. It looks like the bandwidth is pretty low from Dr. Bala Hassan's end, so there's a freeze from him. If we get it okay to return, all right, Dr. Bala Hassan, we understand you are back home.
commit much violence. So
Okay, let's quickly come back to the studios while we get our engineers to sort that out. If it's the audio alone we are able to take via telephone, I'm sure we'll get Dr. Bala Hassan to be part of the interaction. Dr. Bala Hassan, one more time, let's see if you are clear.
I'm here with you.
Sorry, your connection to us froze, so maybe we just start from the beginning of your intervention, namely re-emphasizing the issue of deterrence to those, of course, who are perpetrating election violence. All right, so we'll come back to our studios. Yeah. Professor Alonika, I know there are many dimensions to this whole issue of election violence, but I was just wondering, the view was expressed at some point that we were making incremental progress in dealing with election rigging. For instance, the introduction of technology, and therefore the incentive to engage in some of the more primitive modes of rigging election, those incentives were being discounted. But what then could be amiss now? That yes, we have the introduction of new technology, but it is just in the lead up in the campaigns, and people are breaking heads, breaking limbs, and some persons are in the mortuary.
Yeah, again, we must situate it within the broader society. The intolerance that is part of our society today, whether on ethnic level, religious levels, and the whole mentality of this constant competition is, over territory, over, again, back to the 50s, 60s, and I refer to late Professor Billy Dudley again, where he said, even before independence, political leaders had wanted to control territory and to prevent infiltration by outsiders. So politicians believe they have areas where they can deliver another insulting word. They will say, I will deliver my constituency, as if there are herd of goats that just needed to be delivered to a political party. So I will deliver. So they have a notion of territory. So you are not expected to infiltrate that territory. So again, that is something that has been part of our political history. Unfortunately, they then reinforce it by constantly reference to it is our time. We ought to be the one who will get it by rotation. All those ideas were brought into politics, and so it's easy to tell an average person X need not to come to this territory, because either we cannot go to his territory or because it is our time. So the society itself is polarized in this kind of intolerance, and so the politicians continue to reinforce it in their own interest. And of course, the more you make it difficult for people to blatantly rig election, the more desperate they will to use something to devise another way. So when it was possible to rig election in 2003, 2007, people went to the polling unit, shot gun into the air, disband people, carry the ballot boxes, and go and stuff it. Now if you do that, you're wasting your time. So what is it that we can do now in order to either cause this thing? If we can depress vote to make sure that adherent supporters of a politician in an area where they might not be dominant are intimidated and they don't even come out, that's already a gain. And that we need to do before election. To intimidate them that supporter of party X or candidate X are not wanted in this ward. They are not wanted in this constituency. If you can do that, on the day of election, they probably go to the farm or sit and watch you Good Morning Nigeria rather than go to vote. You've already won an election. There is going to be violence at the electoral post. So our politicians are more brilliant than we really want to accord them. They are always looking at where we can achieve our aim if you block the other way. So the improvement in the administration of election on election day at polling post is part of the desperation to depress people to come out on election day by making it violent, so that I would rather save my life than go to vote for even my friend.
Okay, let's again look at, I'd like to refer to 2019 because it's been adjudged to be, at least to have recorded the list of, election violence, both pre and post. And some people attribute that to true or falsely to the fact that the candidates in that election have what I may call homogeneous background. Both candidates have the same geographical and religious background, so that tended to downplay the reactions of party supporters. And I'm asking and I'm wondering, ahead of 2023 election, how might those indicators trigger negative behavior from party supporters?
There is a sense in which we have made the 2023 elections look like it's only a presidential election.
But that's the biggest election. That was contested.
No, but most of the violence are in the subnational. And because of our constant, interest in the national, we do not look at how the politics at that other sub-level, the way is played in a way that does not even guarantee fairness in every sense for opposition. So if in a state you can't hold rallies in the stadia, you are not allowed to even, then desperation comes.
Regardless of your geographic background. I get it.
So in many situations, they denominate to the point that is ridiculous. If you remember another election, it got to a point where the question was whether you are Catholic, because everybody is a Christian, at least presumably. So when they can't find
the division,
they now started to the point, okay, we should localize the local. So until we take a holistic view of the drivers of electoral violence, we will continue to get this impression at the federal level. If you look at the campaigns at the federal level, how many really have provoked the kind of conversation that we're having?
So if you take River State, if you take Ebonyi, if you take Lagos, if you take Katsina, if you take Kaduna, and see the level of intolerance, the level of, you don't have the level playing ground for opposition, for people who are not in the dominant political parties to play. Those are triggers. So we need to have a more robust conversation in terms of how we look at electoral violence, not just from this national level, but up to the point where we are looking at how the governors and those who want to take over from them are acting. How House of Rep members who have had 4, 5 want to maintain their, all of those issues are also triggers. So for me, it's to say, first and foremost, the politician is always looking for dubious advantage, and he's not the only one who does that. People who want dubious advantage do go to any length to do that. But that is why you have law enforcement. That is why you have a regime of law enforcement that has the responsibility to make sure that there's a law and order regime that can respond to all of that. So once that gap, the law and order regime is not responding to people who want that dubious advantage, you will have challenges, whether it is kidnappers, whether it is armed robbers. Once those who have responsibility to rein them in shirk that responsibility, people are emboldened. If you have a notable politician go in detained and people come to the police station or the prison to come and see him for use of abusive language or violence, it will send the signal that the law and order regime is functioning in a way that can embolden everybody.
Well, thank you very much for your point. We will interrogate further the political behavior, or shall we say electoral behavior at the subnational level. But I think on Good Morning Nigeria, sometime in the past, we had also talked about how the political chieftains, who are the ultimate beneficiaries of this kind of violence, are also the defenders of the perpetrators of violence, on the alibi that, look, these are our boys. You have the instruction from the top. As soon as the commissioner of police decides to pick up those boys, then an order comes from above. If you don't function according to the orders from above, you get transferred as the commissioner of police. Luckily, AIG retired Dr. Bala Hassan is back with us on Zoom. Dr. Bala Hassan, we hope it is stable this time. So let's have your first intervention, and then just the point I was making a moment ago in terms of law enforcement. Why is it that law enforcement appears to be weak when it comes to offenses committed in the course of electioneering?
Well, the weakness of law enforcement agency will be probably, you see, when you look at the appointment of commissioners of police to states and also the appointment of the IG himself, it's exclusive of the center. So when you go to enforcement, provided theoretically what we know is that instruction from the center must be carried out. A governor has no control over Inspector General of Police or even the Commissioner of Police in the states. So if arrests have been made, we have cases whereby you make arrests, you could be given instruction not to carry out prosecutions, and so long people are not arrested and there is no certainty of prosecution and punishment, people are not going to commit offenses. So they should come clearly and give the directive to the Inspector General of Police and to the law enforcement agencies that whoever commits any offenses related to election violence should be treated as, irrespective of party affiliation, should be treated as criminal and prosecuted as such. When this is done, we can see people are likely to obey the law. But when laws are being dispensed indiscriminately, maybe with affiliation with when there is fear of action from the center, then definitely you will see that there will be differential justice. So I believe that there should be people should be treated equally when they commit offense. And also similarly, as earlier said by other speakers, these political offices are very, very attractive. So that attraction to political office will make people likely to commit violence to ensure that they get to power by all means. So I think, in my view, the political office should be less attractive in some countries, in some jurisdictions. When you want to aspire for office, you are going there for service. But you go, if you think that you are going there to as a mean and getting money, then definitely people will do everything possible within their power to use non-state actors like the talks to ensure that they win elections, so that whatever they invest, they don't lose it in the long run. So political offices too should be as much as possible less attractive. When this is done, and also the law enforcement are given the free hand to carry out their duty, then election violence, in my view, may reduce to the barest minimum. It will not be eliminated entirely, but there may be a reduction or there may be improvement in the electoral process.
Dr. Hassan, I'd like for you to speak further on what you have just said about coming out clearly to give the IGP a directive. Because if the president of a country makes a public statement or gives a directive, do we have to codify it in black and white before the IG will swing into action? The NSA has come out to say, even today's newspapers, that the president has given a directive that all the capos, that are preventing opposition parties from campaigning in the states, should be arrested. So what kind of directive do we need to give the Inspector General of Police before he can act?
Well, the direction of the given, let's see this directive being put into action. If this directive be given and in the next couple of days you see that people from the same party, from the center, are being arrested and prosecuted, then other people will come on the line are likely to say that, okay, this is not business as usual. But if directives are given and in the next couple of days you didn't see how they are being implemented, then people will think that virtually there may be something. But we expect in the next couple of days and weeks to come before the election, you will see Party A committing offense, arrested and prosecuted, members of Party B, that is to say, the treatment of all parties equal. When this is done, then the likelihood of using talks and non-state actors will be reduced, and definitely we will have free and fair election for 2023.
Dr. Bala Hassan, thanks. We'll pause you and then return to you later on. But a related issue to all of this, Professor Alemika, is as follows. We do get to hear that some political chieftains, at least we have seen that in the Fourth Republic, would in their conclave say, as Inspector General of Police, we can't trust him. We can't work with him. And that Professor Etanobi Alemika, who is Commissioner of Police, say, I'm just giving a state arbitrary, State X, we can't trust him. We can't rely on him. So move them around or remove them. But how do we, because it is when such persons will argue, when you have such political intrusion into security governance, that the next person who is appointed to replace Ezekwa or to replace your good self will say, oh, to whom do I owe my allegiance? How do we overcome that? When these political chieftains, nothing stops them from planning and plotting, but from realizing their goal of detecting who is the IG, or detecting who is the Commissioner of Police in what they term strategic locations where they want to win electoral war.
I think when we take election outside the capacity of government to govern in Nigeria, we run into a problem. I'm one of the people who believe that we're not going to that we cannot have a capable government until we address certain issues. Almost every major decision of government is actually subject to blackmail by ethnic and religious groups, and I think that's a paralysis we don't often consider. That government is unable to take decision because it must first ask itself which ethnic group will oppose it, which religious group will oppose it? Will this, which region will oppose it? This is a paralyzing factor in decision making in Nigeria, whether law enforcement, whether presidency, whether, and at the state level it has its own dimension too. So that is what we see. Look, it's not so much that somebody directs. If you are a commissioner of police in a state A and you want to arrest somebody, you don't need the IG to tell you whether in that context you are not going to be up against another group that is very powerful in the state, that is going to make represent your action. So exactly what we are saying about electoral violence is what we see in corruption. You arrest somebody, be said, why did you arrest somebody? It's because you are of his religion. It's because of her ethnicity. So it's the same pattern that has paralyzed our government. The division of society has paralyzed capability to govern. So when we also think that only from the top people get instruction, we also don't understand the function of corruption in Nigeria. Many of these chieftains you are saying, it's not because they have power to do it officially. It's by inducement of those who power to make it. And it's not necessarily the people you think you have the power. It's not. You can't go to the president and say, oh, I don't want a commissioner of police direct the IG. Where will you even see the president? What you do is there are people who make this decision. You corrupt them, you induce them, and then of course we're running a system that is terribly organized in crime. And so we still pretend that they are bureaucracy. What we have that is important are those clusters of organized criminals networks. And they're the one who run the run. So I don't want us to think that, is the top. The state governors are very powerful. They buy commissioners that they want to under certain regimes. And when I mean regime, there is a regime in PSC and there is regime in police force headquarters. So it is not the people you think sometimes, that control these things. If you are a governor, you can buy commissioner of police if you are determined. So they are not as powerless as they make it look. It's just that the balance of power sometimes, may not favor them. So for me, is to look at how do we make our institutions strong enough to be independent of all these networks of criminals contending for control.
That's a very apt question that we will look at as we wind down. But Ezenwa, I'd like you to look at another issue, another aspect of the trigger to election violence. And from documented, data, I found that some part of the country, the Southwest, the Niger Delta, and some, areas in the north have the upper hand in, both post and pre-election violence. How would you evaluate what is the trigger? What is driving the desperation? Is it lack of political maturity? Is it lack of political understanding? I don't know. How would you evaluate what is happening? And so must we be looking towards this direction, in 2023?
Well, for me, I always feel that statistics is a prostitute. It depends on, who is playing and where is playing. I think the challenge that confronts us with electoral violence is nationwide. It's nationwide. When you talk about prevalence, it depends on who is conducting, what is the reach of the person doing that work. But I think that it will still need to go back to first, whether you say some parts of the country, there is a sense in which we want to think that poverty is more in certain parts of the country. And that because poverty is more, or because that is the trigger. But I have a sense of what happens generally across the country. I think that poverty works on four legs all over the country. So the trigger is there. The absence of government in terms of really governing, like Prof said. Who is building houses for the poor in the last 40 years? Who is funding public education in the last 40 years?
who is subsidizing subsistence agriculture? We are giving money to political jobbers and farmers, political farmers, rather than the subsistence agriculture that feeds the whole country. So the general governing mechanism of our country has pushed us in the direction in which we need to take deeper and proactive action to be able to deal with the challenge of electoral violence, because those triggers will remain there if all of these are not taken into cognizance. But I need to, if you permit, just a bit about what Prof said. One of the things that worries me about public commentary in Nigeria is the tendency to always, just make a ritual. The ritual that we know, the police commissioners are powerless, the DOCs are powerless. But Governor Donald Duke, former governor of Cross River State, he openly told us how this thing works. That people are appointed commissioners, they come to the governor, and that when they come to the governor, they get a brand new Jeep. Your whole total salary until you finish cannot buy that Jeep. There is money given to you, accommodation is given to you, a furniture is given to you. When you finish, if you behave well, you take them. If you don't behave well, you know that you can't take on your own. So there are already transactional engagements that make it difficult for these people to function, and we are not dealing with them. Number two, it is like Prof said, there are deep pockets, dominant deep pockets that are not necessarily political, that are controlling law enforcement in the country. You see vehicles of security provisioning institutions that have label of people who donated the vehicle. If there is a vehicle that Oga Kingsley donated to the police and is branded Kingsley Osadolo, and I have problem with you, the vehicle that is coming to come and arrest me is Kingsley Osadolo. There is already a clear feeling that I cannot get justice.
I'm going to donate 10 vehicles.
So, but the point that I make is that you see, Prof.
That's right. We got a point. Yes.
Prof opened it in a way that if we truly are desirous of making changes, the president of this country, no matter what, cannot say, don't use the Eagle Square. He won't say that. Mm-hmm. But governors are saying that in their states. You cannot use this place. They lock it up. They claim that they are doing innovation. Everybody sees these things, and nobody is able to say you can't do this. And the commissioner of police, who has responsibility to tell him that he can't do that, or will not tell you that he's waiting for power from IG. Mm-hmm. The governors, every governor in this state visits IG every time. There is a visit to the IG. Visits, everybody is coming to visit the IG. What are they coming to see him for?
Sometimes when the CP is not behaving
well. No, sometimes even when he's behaving well, the CP is also telling them, go and see the IG. You know you have to see the IG. I'm not... So we know these things until people take away transactional, this whole money-making, commodification of even responsibility. Until we take it out, we are not going to make any headway.
And Prof and Dr. Bala Hassan, look, it should be curious to anyone who's observed the pre-election or pre-voting incidents around the country that we don't appear to hear of reports of X number of persons who have been picked up or who have been prosecuted. It's just plain curious. The lady who was murdered in Kara local government area, it appears that, it's the family that will just mourn her loss, and then the next thing, everybody goes home, you sing Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and then you go and vote, and so on and so forth. Billboards and posters have been torn down in some locations. Willful destruction of property. A poster is a property of an individual. We had a conversation on that some time ago. That is again the issue around law enforcement. Why does law enforcement appear to be a big, why do we just appear rather now, I would say, to develop clear feet when it comes to law enforcement? Dr. Bala Hassan, please let me hear it before I donate my vehicles.
I can tell you with full certainty that we have commissioners of police in Nigeria who, before the elections, they take preemptive measures to ensure that elections are done peacefully. I know of commissioner of police before a few weeks to the election. He went and identified his political hotspot and carry out some raiding of political talks and drug addicts and incarcerated them using legal means. That way brought issue of political violence in that state to the barest minimum. So there are so many commissioners of police who know the strategy to bring this thing, and if they implement it, if you go to the election, you know your flashpoints. Each commissioner of police knows his flashpoint politically, and also where you have your drug barrels where people take drugs, because for you to do political violence, definitely you must be under influence of drugs. So if these people if the commissioners will take those preemptive actions by having the political will to go and raid these criminal hiders as done by their predecessors. I know a few years ago, about 4 years ago, one CP did that, and they had a very peaceful election in the state. Raid these criminal hiders, arrest these political talks, drug barons, Indian smokers, and take them before a court of law. And by the time you do that, and you get the necessary legal machinery to keep them incarcerated, then you will have free and fair election. Many commissioners can do that, I can assure you.
So, Claire, I just wanted to ride on the point that Dr. Hassan made. Dr. Hassan, thanks a lot for informing us about that. But it is also the case that I would imagine in nearly, if not all of the states of the Federation, some of the political thugs are known, and they wear it as a badge of honor that they are the governor's boy or they are the political party's henchmen. Why is it again that it would appear that the law shies away from taking in these persons? Some of them are there. The names are known. If I mention any state, for instance, and somebody will tell you, yeah, these are the hotheads. And usually when regimes change, they also change them. And then those who were henchmen before that, they fall into the background. Why is it that the law doesn't appear to go after that? Does it re-emphasize the point that we made earlier, that in some cases you try to go after that, and then there is a call from above, or that above could also be from the governor himself, who says, no, these are our boys?
Well, I can tell you, if Commissioner X can do that, Commissioner Y can do that. Once a commissioner knows what his thoughts, can go after these political talks, and irrespective of whose ox is God, you can prosecute these individuals, and nothing is going to happen, provided for every political party, any person from irrespective of political party will do that. It becomes a problem when party X are being punished, while party Y are not being punished. But when a commissioner of police arrests some thugs from party A and treat them appropriately, and does some for party B, there won't be any complaint. But because a problem where party A does something, you look the other way, party B does something, you prosecute them. That's where you have problem. But if you do it without any fear effect, but definitely the community, the whole state, even the IG and the president will support you. But we don't want a situation whereby you arrest party A, you leave them, you arrest party B, you prosecute them. That is not what you are there for. And of course, if these things are done, as I earlier said, without any fear or favor, it's better for all of us. And of course, I know a situation whereby the Inspector General of Police, few days to election, he juggled the commissioners. So that way, it will reduce influence of party chieftains on that state commissioner. That also goes a long way to prevent political violence pre- and post-election.
Bala Hassan, thank you. I also have a question for you, but that will be after we come back from a very short break. If you've just tuned in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and right on time for us to take a breather. Welcome back. You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're looking at election violence ahead of 2023 general elections. And I said earlier on that I was going to ask Dr. Bala Hassan a question, and if Dr. Hassan, okay, there it is. So you had given us a very good example or instance where the police commissioner in a particular state did the right thing, taking proactive, steps towards before an election. But the preponderance is that in most states, or in many states across the Federation, police commissioners tend to display their loyalty to the state executives. And my question will be, will it be possible for a police commissioner to do the right thing during election in a state where he's also loyal to a state executive, where he has collected, he has received some form of support, it could be financial support, it could be material support into vehicles and all that. Is it possible? And if it is so, how can we do that? How can we extricate that, loyalty from, to enable the police commissioner to do the right thing?
Well, that's why I earlier told you that few days to election, the weeks to election, the force headquarters have the tradition of reposting commissioners of police. I will recall during my time I was commissioner of police in Abuja. I was taken to Niger State to go and conduct elections. So that period there will be enough time for the governor to patronize and know the commissioner of police for him to do anything out of the ordinary. So that practice has been on, and it has given us the desired result. But a lot depends on the sitting commissioner of police at that material time, because the training is the same, the directives come from the center. If you are posted to a state newly, you only need to work with your deputy commissioners of police operations and admin to know the flash points of the new area you are, and do what is needful to ensure peaceful election. So that stance by the force headquarters is with a view to correcting this process whereby the commissioner of police has been working with the governor for the past 1 year. He has donated patrol vehicles to him. He has launched a new police station. So there is likelihood that that commissioner of police may dance to the tune of the governor. So a few days to election will change them. So that is another way of ensuring neutrality of commissioners of police before elections.
In your view, has it worked? Dr. Hassan, in your view, has it worked?
Well, it has worked in several places, because I gave you an example of I know many have done it without orchestrating it. I told you an example of commissioner of police 2 years ago who carried out these things, and nobody's talking for him, because he will do what is right. He identified whether election or not is taking place. Taking drugs is an offense known to law. He raided this drug hideouts, and I see several young people who are vulnerable, mainly for election purposes. I see several of them, clamped them into jail, got court order, kept them there, and there was sanity in the state. So people should have their own strategy and ensuring peace and order in the state. And no government will stop you for arresting miscreant in the state, even though, as earlier said, most of these people are agents of the political parties. But you are not arresting them because they are agents of political parties. Taking drugs is an offense known to law. Dealing on hard drugs is an offense, and committing the heinous crime and violent crimes and offense. So you know your work, you know your flashpoint, do the arrest. Nobody will call you say don't arrest a drug bearer. You have arrested. You want to sanitize society. At the back of your mind, you want to ensure that you have a peaceful state before the election. And when you do, nobody's going to stop you from doing that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bala Hassan. Interested as your proposals are for dealing with issues around election violence, I'm just wondering, well, yes, redeploying police commissioners could be helpful on the eve of elections, but we still have well over 80 days to the elections, and the kind of incidents that have been reported are unsavory. I mean, there's violence, there are fatalities. Redeploying commissioners of police will not be a solution at this material time. How do we deal with the existential challenges that we are facing ahead of the 2023 elections? I imagine that. But the proposals, of course, on the eve of elections to avoid voter suppression tactics and so on and so forth, just also might be helpful. But Professor Lemika, I realize one point that we also need to come back to is what Professor Alemika talked about earlier, the Dudleyan notion of electoral territory. To say, yeah, this is my territory, so I will deliver. This is my territory, I will deliver, I will protect it. This has led to a certain sense of warlordism, you know, either in a small constituency or at the state level where the emperor is in charge. But we also know from our electoral history that sometimes it then becomes a balance, if not of terror, but at least of power. There are persons who will say they will use federal might to neutralize or pulverize the state level or a targeted constituency. And the target of that federal might that is being deployed will then say, okay, we will not sit down to fold our arms, since it's our territory and we need to capture and continue to hold on to it, we will have our own militias respond. How do we overcome all of this? I know that the incentive there, of course, is power and economic gains. But how do we overcome it? Because there are, of course, complaints about abuse of federal might. And then those who are the target of federal might would say, look, we have to resist you by other means.
I think, again, we exaggerate federal might in Nigeria.
You think so?
Yes. I was one of the people who conducted, I was with National Orientation when we conducted 1999 elections. And I have been with them for about 5-6 years. And my experience is the day to take election. And I tell, the INEC chairperson, I say you are just glorified. The most powerful person, for example, is the local electoral officer, not the EO. Yes, it's not this way of bringing things to the national makes the local a problem. And that is what we see with delivery of governance. Who is talking about irresponsible governance at the state level is the president. Yet everybody collects its own allocation every month and they go home with it. Nobody blames any state government for anything that is wrong. So I think somebody might go to the village and say, I have federal might. What does it mean in reality? How many police, if he's going to use police, how many police are there that he's going to use to accomplish his goal relative to the community? So I think this narrative is one of the things we have built in this country, which politicians have used so that you do not examine their behavior at their own level.
Because I know you're making you're explaining, I'll give you that, but how then do you explain the intrusion of some military personnel in some territories in the course of the election? Prof, yes. Okay. Yeah, Prof, how do you explain that?
You are assuming that that a police commissioner had no vested interest in what happens in his own constituency, irrespective of being a police officer, and although you are taking a military officer, don't have a vested interest, either transactional or other reason in those communities. And I say that's why you are looking at these clusters rather than even just people believe, some other network to which they belong. And you think it's just a governmental hierarchy that is at work. We misplace it. But let me just make this point. You're not going to solve this problem until we change, because I think we're running over even an electoral system. Once you have the first past the poll in a developing countries, it automatically generates violence. What do you mean? The system this wasteful system which we have now, where minority is always our governor. What do we mean? We have 30 million election. There are 6 parties, and the highest scoring one scored only 7 million. But because the highest scoring becomes the elected person, 23 votes, a million votes are wasted. If we to go to proportional representation, in which it is not the winner takes all, at least at the legislature, where our representation will be proportional to our direct election, will be reducing some of this tension, and we will not be able to invite our ethnic and religious people to back us up under the notion of marginalization. So I think it was in Uwe's report, but we didn't give it the adequate, it will solve even the problem of minority female representation. So I think we should be thinking about that. It will reduce the desperation. That's one thing I think we should take away from this. And then for
long-term constitutional
for law enforcement response, we must also realize that electoral election is a process, but unfortunately it's also an event, and we are not yet given the level of equipping of our law enforcement agencies, the capacity to manage a national event very well. Of course, when there is an offshore or a Kogi, out of session, we can take all the police and dump them there and harass, make sure they don't, speak. But when you now have a national election of the same management, where are the personnel? Where is the technology? Where is the vehicle? So these logistics also play without us demonizing those institutions, without thinking that it is because they are being instructed. There is also capacity gap when it comes to national event management.
That's what you want to add to what it's saying.
Well, so the NSDC, DSS, the army are all doing police duties now. All of them are involved in police duties. So the army is on the checkpoint in different states. So the GOC is also important now. He has become important. If he was not doing police duties, he would not be important. He would be in his barracks, invisible. Now you can go on the road and see DSS people on the road with the DSS black, this thing, mountain road block. So the fact that they also are in this fight for territorial control is also part of the challenge of, organizing a proper election. So what now happens is that if the commissioner of police is responsible, you may have a DSS director in the state who is compromised. So you see in election clashes, you are an observer and you have a tag, you have been identified, and the army say you cannot move because they don't want you to go there, because it's already he's doing police duty that he has no responsibility to do. So the variegated nature of the compromises is also a huge challenge. Then for me is also the fact that cronyism and patronage at that subnational level is used to destabilize the process. So in many states, people go to prisons, people who are condemned are brought out from prison during elections. Some of them who have murder charges on them are appointed chairmen of local governments. And everybody knows them that. So you have a case in court and you are chairman of local government. There is a job for you to do. If you don't do it well, you go back to, we wake up these same issues. So what the governors are doing in their states is pretty unchallenged. And nobody is bold enough to engage them in the way that if they cannot use this one, they go to this one. If they cannot use this one. So it now leaves the opposition. Small arms, the level of small arms that has been brought into this country for 2023 election is mind-boggling. At the different levels, by those who know that the states, the state apparatus is going to be used to oppress them. They are now also equipping their own balance of their own militias. So the point is, there needs to be a multi-stakeholder conversation on security provisioning during election.
Aren't we having too much of this conversation?
No. The conversation is, you see, when Professor Lemeka did that one, who are you bringing to? When you say too much, you have ritual programs where you invite sweethearts, you come and do sweetheart talks. If you invite people who have the capacity to speak truth to power in their very presence and open up these issues without necessarily sweet coating or having a sweetheart conversations around them, you put them back
in the place where people can be their conscience, because at the end of the day it's about conscience.
Emeka, we have we have institutions, we have the security agencies, we have INEC. Where is INEC, for instance, in the whole of this conversation? Because one of the sections of the Electoral Act as amended gives the candidates, for instance, protects the rights of the candidates to campaign anywhere. I don't know if I'm wrong. Have we seen INEC, implement this section of the Electoral Act?
Where is the police of INEC? So that's why I said when we started, I said everybody is warning. That's where we started this conversation from. INEC wants the chairman of Independent National Election. You read it here yourself. He has warned politicians to. The NSA has warned politicians to. Until that warning is taken to mean that somebody has, just imagine it, that the presidential candidate of X party who doesn't have immunity is brought to the police station to answer questions.
Exactly.
Just see the kind of message that it will send.
Yeah, provided, of course, again, there are grounds for picking up that president.
No, that's the basic.
I understand the example that you are citing, but obviously it relates again to law enforcement. Yes. Law enforcement. We have a plenitude of provisions in our statute books that could be called up, and why we are not reaching out to it. But gentlemen, just before we wrap this up, I'm just wondering. I know that chipping away at the notion of electoral territory could be difficult, but what should we expect, and what can we expect from state chief executives? First, you are the chief law officer. No, you are chief security officer. Chief law officer will be the attorney general. You are the chief security officer of your state. I know that sometimes you say, you are powerless, XYZ, but ensuring the peace, order, and good governance of your state is your responsibility. And we are seeing and hearing about these incidents. What should state governments, through their governors, begin to do at this time? Professor Lebeka, very quickly.
I think it's too late for 2023. But I think there are many things we'll be thinking. Shouldn't we actually be thinking about a single term for now for political office holder? And I say this with experience from the university. When we used to have 2 terms
for vice chancellors.
Vice chancellors target those who they think might want to interrupt the second term. So if there was no single term now, only God knows how many professors who have died in the VC struggles. And I think if you have one term for now, and there is nothing, the stupidity I hear about politicians saying is undemocratic. That is not it is not the term that makes it democratic. It is the content, it is the culture. There is nothing undemocratic about one single term. Who says you must be only 2? If it's a principle of democracy, maybe we look at it. What we've seen in that at least the VCs, for example, now don't fight for themselves for a second term, and they don't remember to begin to fight for their crony. In fact, they don't know who their crony will be until a few months before their tenure ends. And I think it's brought peace. And from that, I always think, shouldn't we reflect and have conversation around it, so that we do not have this desperation of wanting to be in the second term. Then violence will be greater where 2 or more parties are strong in a state. That's also the trend you should watch. Once 2 parties are in hot contest, there will be likely of violence. If it is just a dominant, only one party state, the violence will reduce. You don't have a lot of violence because the person knows that the done is deed. He just were waiting for the declaration. So there are many of a part of the electoral process itself. I've had my friend Bala Hassan and the rest say the problem in Nigeria, I return to this blackmail by ethnicity political parties. Where do you start? The first time you start and you take from party A and you take him to police station, all the other parties will say it is biased. You have to start from somewhere.
Professor Tanabe, you have to round off your...
So it makes it difficult for you even to start, because law enforcement anywhere in the world is selective. to get a target of deterrence. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to make scapegoat that will spend, to tell the public this is no longer acceptable.
I think that's a very beautiful place to thank you, Professor Etanebi Alimeka, and he is Professor of Criminology. Thank you as always for coming to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
Ezenwa Nwagu is Chairman, Partners for Electoral Reforms and Convener, Say No Campaign Nigeria. And I always call him Emeka. Ezenwa. Thank you very much for coming.
It's my pleasure.
Also, Dr. Bala Hassan, retired Assistant Inspector General, AIG of Police, and he joined us via Zoom from Lagos. Dr. Bala Hassan, thank you very much, and have a pleasant day.
Thank you very much, Claire.
All right, let's see what's happening. The World Cup, of course, has produced quite a number of upsets. Germany, the German machines are out of the competition. So let's join our sports desk for details.
I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Claire Adilabu Abdul Razak. The campaign against rape and rapists is on. Do join us in this fight. Have a great weekend, everyone.